capacity to know and to understand, to do the academic curriculum if you like. But they can all develop to some extent that intelligent management of life. Having understanding of the concepts and the ideas that give them some grip over the physical, the social, the economic and the moral worlds in which they live. So that was the first thing. I've got to be very careful referring to Dewey because for a long time he was really on the index of forbidden books in this country. When I first went to Oxford 21 years ago, I had to speak at a conference at Wilson College. I shared the table with Keith Joseph. Those of you who may not know who he was the Secretary of State for Education under Margaret Thatcher. He was the longest serving Secretary of State in this country since the war, and of course, a great brains behind what Margaret Thatcher did and said. And they put me next to him at dinner, and he turned round to me after the soup and said, "Is your name Pring?" which is difficult to deny at 50. So I said, "Yes, what have I done wrong?" And he said, "You have caused all the problems in our schools." And I felt rather chuffed. You don't get this sort of accolade very often. I said, "Well, what have I done to deserve that?" And he said, "You introduced teachers to John Dewey, and he has caused all the problems in our school. Now, please, you must read John Dewey." To my mind, so I thought, I've got to do something about this, so I produced a book on John Dewey, the philosopher of education for the 21st century. Recently, David Willetts came up to see me. Oh, by the way, this conversation with Joseph went on for several years, and he had a deathbed conversion. He believed John Dewey was a good thing. So I thought, good, I've now managed to influence the Conservative Party. I'll no longer be attacking John Dewey. Then Willetts, now of course in charge of universities and so on, came up to see me about 3 months ago. I took him out to dinner, a splendid lunch, very good. Just as we were going, he said, "But Richard, isn't the real problem in this country John Dewey?" I thought, oh my God, I've got to start all over again. But Dewey was a great philosopher. And really, you've got to start with where the youngsters are. He was accused of being the cause of progressive education, just let everybody down. He was equally attacking of the progressive movement. And I want to come back to the basis of that attack as what we are really trying to do. With that knowledge of understanding, practical capabilities. And one of the things that we felt in our reviews we were around is because we've got this narrow conception of what counts as an educated person, namely a person who's rather good academically, who's able to get through. Diana Ravitch has produced a wonderful book on the dangers of assessment and so on, a brilliant book, problems of testing, etc. in the United States. That if you get that narrow view, then you dismiss the practical learning through which many young people really are going to flourish, that practical intelligence. Just recently, twice recently, I've been at conferences, speaking at conferences at Windsor Castle, and we went round that wonderful building, St. George's Chapel, Windsor. And you realise that beautiful chapel survived now for 600 years, one of the most incredible buildings, one of the most incredible, not just artistic, but engineering feats, was built on the whole by people who could not read or write. People who had inherited a tradition of practical doing and making and creating through the guilds, and through that link between mind and body, mind and hand. Read Richard Sennett's wonderful book, Craftsman, as he analyses that kind of knowledge. And it's something which we've almost dismissed as significant in our schools ever since the national curriculum in 1988. So we stress that, just to show you the kind of ways in which now we educate many young people. I was getting the train from London to Oxford a bit ago, changing at Reading. Train was going on to Swansea. I asked this young chap to remove his feet from the seat so I could sit down. That got me engaged in conversation. "What are you doing?" I'm studying engineering." "Where?" I said, "Oh, in Brunel." I said, "As you move out of Paddington, don't you feel a real thrill and excitement?" "Why is it?" I said, "This was built by Brunel. He said, who is he? All right, studying engineering at Brunel University, had no background to this, the imagination, the great achievements of some of our greatest engineers. And dare I say, I've just been talking to Anne, who did her first degree at care in the University of East Anglia, and in this course that she's had, I'm sure it was a wonderful course. It's produced these wonderful DPhil students for here. She's never, nobody told her about Lawrence Stenhouse, the greatest educational thinker in this country since the war. All right, so I've got to ring tomorrow, care, and tell them they've got to improve the general education that they're giving to their students. So the next thing we did was moral seriousness. You could have these young people with knowledge and practical capability and so on, but what is it to be human except to be a moral human being in terms of thinking about the issues that really matter in our society? And you don't have to be a great intellectual brain to do that. Thinking about issues of racism, environment and so on. The sense of community. On this moral seriousness, I don't know if any of you saw on television the programme Ballyhoo. It was a few years ago now. And what they did, the English Ballet Company in Birmingham brought together, for long effort, cooperation, youth service, social services and so on, brought together about 120 of some of the most disadvantaged teenagers. They dropped out of school, in trouble with the police, they belonged to what's called the neat category, not in education, employment and training. And they got them, this lot, ineducable, one might think, to a ballet. A ballet, this rock ballet, not just a ballet, but Shakespeare, Romeo and Juliet. Apparently they persuaded the English Ballet Company produced Romeo and Juliet, Prokofiev's Romeo and Juliet. And you know, it was the most amazing success. Dancing, acting, and so on. And the chairman of the Arts Council said it was an inspired choice of story. Cross-starred lovers, dysfunctional families, gang warfare, macho games, self-harm, drug abuse, knife crime. Shakespeare has it all. And then, at the very end, there was this lovely interview with Emma, who took the part of Lady Cabinet. And she said, what has this done? Remember, this is a dropout who run away from home, disengaged from education and so on. And she played this brilliantly and so on. She said, what's this done for you? Oh, it's changed my life, she said. It's changed my life. I now understand my mother. All right? Now, you give her a grade A or one thing or another. Here was a transforming experience in which, through drama, and through ballet and so on, they were engaged in moral seriousness about the issues that really affected them and affect society. A sense of community, back to citizenship, if you like. Because part of what it is to be human is to be engaged with others. It is to be part of society. It is to have the capacity to help politically in different ways to transform society. So what we drew upon here was very much a great philosopher, Michael Oakeshott, who said, look, education is where you introduce young people, all young people, into a world of ideas through which they come to see the world differently. That social world, political world, moral world, and so on. And so he said, and that world of ideas is itself a result of what he called a conversation between the generations of mankind, in which these young people come to see, to appreciate, to understand the voice of poetry, the voice of drama, the voice of philosophy, the voice of science. Now what a different way of thinking about education, enabling all young people in some way to participate in that kind of conversation. And this is where we need to contrast it with a language which now permeates education at every level, in which we see education as defined in terms of educational success in these performance management terms, in terms of a string of targets. And those string of targets have to be specified more and more and more precisely.